Hi, I'm Trisha at Club Scrap. Welcome to the Handmade Box with Cards project. You're going to love the final project you'll make with this beautiful Magnolia kit. If this is the first time you've ever done a project of this nature with me, I highly recommend just sitting back, watching how the project all comes together, and then go and replay the video, which will be available to you, and work at your very own pace. And also, if you're new, I'd recommend following along with the actual kit that I'm using to make the same exact thing, so you're not worrying about what to substitute with what. Once you've mastered that, go ahead and substitute with any Club Scrap page kit of your choice to make this project totally your own. Let's go ahead and get started. As a refresher, this is the Handmade Box with Cards. Isn't it beautiful? It's got this nice ribbon closure, a beautiful lid that has a drop spine here on the box itself, and then inside you'll find a dozen greeting cards. Now these cards, I will give you the framework and the base for each card, and then you'll be free to design the cards as you wish. I will give you some suggestions on how to do that. First thing we're going to do is make the box shape, then we'll make the cover for the box, and then we'll prep all the cards. Now, as we get started, I've got my kit here, and that contains ribbons and photo mats and all these other embellishments. I'm going to begin by separating that out and grabbing just the paper, and we'll also be trimming the photo mats. To stay organized, I'm using my handy accordion pocket file again, and this pocket file has 4 sections, and that helps us stay organized with different phases of the project. If you don't already have one of these, of course, I can help set you up with making one for yourself. And in the meantime, just maintain 4 separate piles for all of the different phases of assembly. So this little lip here goes underneath my trimmer base. Speaking of, I'm using my favorite trimmer here. This guillotine style works like a dream. I've got my instructions ready to go. The first thing I like to do is sort the paper into the order that we'll be trimming it. So again, this is Club Scrap's Magnolia page kit, and you can substitute with papers 1 for 1 from a different Club Scrap page kit quite easily. The first 2 papers we'll trim will be this beautiful wine color. So grab both of the wine papers. I'm just going to set everything down on my work surface here. Then we're going to find the green print. That would be this one. Isn't that a beautiful print? I'm going to put that face down. Next, we'll trim the pink print face down. Then grab 2 each of the white linen. This collection has some beautiful white linen texture here. 2 of the green. This is such a unique and beautiful shade of green. And then 2 pink. So we're going to trim all the paper in this kit, followed by the last green print and the last pink print. And then we have all of this artwork on our cut-aparts. I'll talk about those in a little bit as well. And after sorting it in that order, let's flip everything back over to the top where we started with the wine. And then you also have a pile of these smaller photo mats. I'm going to put those on the bottom of my stack here. We'll be trimming those as well to fit onto our card bases. Okay, so here we begin with our first sheet of the wine paper. And according to my instructions, I see a little arrow right here. That tells me that the paper needs to dip easily in that direction, grain-wise. So to determine the direction of the grain of your paper, hold by an edge. I pretty much talk about this every time I make something, because it's important. If I hold it by this edge, do you see how the paper dips real easily? But if I hold it by this edge, it's very stiff. So I want that paper dipping easily from the top of my trimmer to the bottom. And that will set us up for success in our book project that we're about to make. So we'll trim this at 9 inches. So you find the whole number 9 here. Make sure you're looking at inches, not centimeters. Stabilize on the clear bar after making sure your paper is level, and slice. Then we'll rotate the 9-inch piece and trim it at 10 3/4. That's 10 3/4. I'm stabilizing again. And here we have our first piece. This grows up to be the outside cover wrap of our book. I'm going to place this in pocket A, or it might be pile A. And then the remaining 2 pieces I'll add to pocket D. That's where all of the pieces we'll use to decorate our book are going to live. Now let's take the next sheet of wine and let's check that grain direction. This time I want the paper to dip easily from the left to the right, and you can see that on the cutting diagram here is dipping left to right. And we're just going to cut it 6 inches, then rotate and trim at 6 3/4. This also will go in pocket A. And believe it or not, all the rest of this we can use to decorate. So I'm going to place that in pocket D. Enter this beautiful print. Now this is important. If you're choosing your own paper style, I recommend a smaller pattern on this one that doesn't have a particular direction. And I want to make sure that this paper dips easily from top to bottom. Got a nice simple cut here at 6 inches. Gather up those two pieces and place them in pocket B. Now these papers are a little bit, they're the same width as my accordion pocket file, so when I place them in pocket B, I do so at an angle. Now the cuts on this next print pertain more to the artwork being where I want it to be, so just bear with me here. Our first cut will be at 6 inches. And then 4 3/4. Notice the print was right side up in the trimmer when I started. Now I'm going to rotate the paper in this direction so that this big flower is on my left, and we'll trim at 9. This will be placed in pocket A. And then we have this little rectangle here that goes in D for decorating later. Now for this piece, I'll place it in the trimmer at 11 1/4. And make sure the white flower here is on the right. And then go to 6 3/4. Okay, now I want you to rotate it in this direction so that those flowers are on the left and the piece is vertically in your trimmer, and cut at 5. That gives me a nice paper for the inside cover of my book, if you follow that, all those rotations, and place this in pocket A. This one will go also in B, pocket B as in boy, and then there should be 2 other scraps. Those can go in D. Now is the fun and easy part. I'm going to show you a little time-saving trick with this as well. We're going to turn all the rest of these plain papers into card bases. So if you are a card maker, listen up for this time-saving tip. All right, so first of all, these cards are going to end up becoming folded. And so I'm checking the grain direction of the 2 sheets of white linen. So you might even want to check both individually. Make sure that the paper dips easily from left to right. It's going to set you up for a nice fold. We'll cut at 8 1/2, and then rotate and trim at 11. I want you to set this aside for now, okay? Then grab the green. We're gonna check our grain here. This green paper is like 100-pound cover weight. It's very heavy. So that's when you are folding with the grain really matters. If you fold against the grain, it'll be one of those icky, crumply folds. 8 1/2. Wow, you can even hear it, how heavy this paper is. And I'm rotating, trim at 11. Set this aside. Now we're on to the pink. Checking grain, I want it dipping easy, left to right. There we go. Guess what? 8 1/2. No, I'm letting those scraps pile up even, that's okay. And 11. Okay, set this aside for a second. Now here we have all of these larger and smaller pieces. Those go in pocket D. And I'm going to bring in my score palette just for a moment to show you this quick trick. So these are going to become 2 card bases, but why score twice when you only need to score once? So I'll just place the paper vertically in my score pal and score at 4 1/4 on all of these, so that when I eventually cut the paper in half, both cards will be scored with only 1 pass on the score pal. When I get to the linen texture papers, make sure the linen texture side is facing up. So always score right side up and set your score pal aside. Now I'm going to take the white 8 1/2 by 11 that's been scored, place it into my trimmer horizontally, and it's cut at 5 1/2. I'll do the same for the green, horizontally at 5 1/2, and the pink at 5 1/2. So that's a real time saver when you're making cards of a larger quantity. You can take all of these card bases and place them in pocket C. C for card. Oh, I found another little scrap here. Next up, I'm going to take this green print and I'm going to challenge you a little bit with our measurements because it's going to be so worth it at the end. Our first cut here is going to be, I know, at 11 5/8. 11 5/8. You can do it. All right, so let's see. If you're not comfortable with 11 5/8, you will be, okay? So here on my trimmer, 11 5/8 is halfway between 11 1/2 and 11 3/4. You see that little mark right there? The one right in the middle? That's 11 5/8. So there's 11 1/2, 11 5/8 right there. Next one's easier. 7 3/4 and 3 7/8. Now that's halfway between 3 3/4 and 4. That little mark right there is 3 7/8, and you can see how much my trimmer is loved. I use it a lot. Okay, now I should have, I'm hoping, 3 strips that are all the same size. I think we're going to give this a go. Let's just trim them together. The first cut is at 10 1/4. Just make sure everything's nice and neatly stacked at 10 1/4. Then slide down to 5 1/8. Now 5 1/8 is halfway between 5 and 5 1/4. That little guy right there, 5 1/8. That gives me 6 panels, all the same exact size, and that's going to go in pocket or pile C. Let's repeat that for review. Here with the pink print, we've got 11 5/8, 7 3/4, 3 7/8, halfway between 3 3/4 and 4, 3 7/8. Stack them up. Let's see, we know our scrap's going to come off the end, so I'll keep some of this artwork here. However you want, you can stack them up, and we'll trim at 10 1/4, and then slide down to 5 1/8, halfway between 5 and 5 1/4. You've once again made 6 panels, all the same size, for pocket C. You've made a series of scraps here. We can pick those up. I mean, if you think you're not going to use it, you can certainly put it in the circular file as well, but you just never know. So I'm just going to keep all these and place them in pocket D. And here we have our cut aparts. And this artwork starts out as a larger sheet, 12 1/4, and you have to remove the outer perimeter according to those little guidelines there. So what I usually do is just place this in the trimmer, trim shy of the guide, and rotate. And then I can really see my silver blade both here at the top and down at the bottom, just to take off that edge. Now the reason we do this and have you do these final cuts is so that they're as accurate as they can be. When the cut aparts are trimmed on a commercial size trimmer, the accuracy just wasn't to my satisfaction. So that's why I have you do that final little trim. And then you can trim these into individual pieces. I'm not going to take the time to do that on the video here because we have a limited amount of time, and I want to be able to take our time as we work with the book and get all of that made. Now, if you're already working at your own pace here, just pause the video and consult your instructions for the measurements. Otherwise, just visually separate each element that's on the sheet. After trimming all the pieces, I put them in pocket D and repeat the process for the other sheet of cut aparts. For our final cut, I'm going to take 2 at a time of these photo mats. These are 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. They're designed to hold 4 by 6 photos, but they're also great card panels, so let's adapt them. We'll trim horizontally at 5 1/4, and then rotate and trim vertically now at 4. And that's going to give me panels. I'm going to set them aside for now. We'll file them all at once. So again, horizontally at 5 1/4, rotate vertically at 4. Working 2 at a time, 5 1/4, rotate 4. Now the white linen at 5 1/4 and 4. and 4. And the last 2 pink here at 5 1/4 and 4. All right, now we have this whole pile of panels that can all go in pocket C. That's it for the trimming. Now, one of the reasons I like having you do the trimming is that you are equipped then to replicate this project of your own free will. You don't always have to buy a full kit to make that happen. You can just get these components and then make it yourself once you sort of master the skills, which is, I think, a great advantage. And naturally, we'll begin by removing everything from pocket A, and we also need our boards. Now, let's take a look at the boards that come in this kit here, and you need a pencil. We'll do a little bit of labeling here so we can keep everything straight. This isn't absolutely necessary, but I just kind of like it for illustration. The 2 shortest pieces, those are your short walls. You can abbreviate. This just helps keep everything straight. Then these 2 longer pieces are your long walls. They should have a mate, a long wall. Then you have this taller piece. It's a single. That's your spine. So the book has a spine. This smaller single is our base. And these other 2 pieces that are a little taller, that's your cover. Okay? Before we do anything with the papers, let's grab our long walls, our short walls, and our base. And we're gonna make that box shape so that it has plenty of time to dry while we're working on the cover. First, let's take the long walls and put them to the right and left of the base, and the short walls go top and bottom like this. If your base is vertically positioned, this is our starting lane here. Now, what we're gonna do is put some glue on the edge of one short wall. So I'm just gonna take our bookbinding glue. If you don't have this as a product, I wouldn't do the project without, and just put a line of it on that edge, and use the foam brush that came in the complete kit to sort of dab it so it's a thorough coating but not oozing or dripping, okay? Now this is gonna sit on top of the base right at the edge. And so, you know, move it around, position it to where you can see it best to make sure the edge of this wall is aligned with the edge of the base, nice and level. Now you think, how is that gonna stay there? But the 1/8 inch thickness of the board allows that wall to be formed. And in just a matter of moments with this bookbinding glue product, that wall sits up pretty nicely. You can see it's forming a nice L shape. Now the long wall will be attached next. I'm just gonna go with this one. And you have to study the contact points of the wall. So this edge will make contact with the face of the short wall. This edge is gonna sit on top of the base. So I have 2 areas to apply glue, here and here. And run that, oop, I did drip, oh no. We got a little crazy. No problem. It's a water-based glue. We can just wipe it up, not a big deal. So this will all be covered as well, so you don't have to worry so much about excess, but I just like to work as neatly as I can. So now I'm gonna try to make a joint here between my long wall and my short wall. I want those ends to bond, okay? It's nice to have this machine cut as well so that the cuts are nice and straight. If I cut it with a craft knife, it takes like about 17 passes. And sometimes my lines are crooked. So here we have pretty good bonding here on the edge, and you see that corner being formed. And I'm gonna clean up my little mess here. Next, ideally you'll attach the other long wall, again studying the same contact points. It's here and here. So this time I'll be neat about my application. Maybe just do the short wall, short edge here, and then my long one. Please don't over apply here. It is a small amount needed, but it has to be thorough. So that's why we do that little tap, 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 tap. And place. The nice part about working with a liquid glue like this is you have time to move things around, make your adjustments. I had to push up that short wall a little bit to meet the long wall. And that's what you want to do. You want all those edges meeting. So I'm going to make a little rotation here so I can see better. Notice there's that little lip there. That's what we want because we have to have room for our other short wall, right? So look at this nice looking angled joint here. It's really a good looking box. Now, let's study the final contact points for this base here. So we have the short wall coming in contact with these ends. So basically at this spot and this spot, and also on the edge here. So knowing that, this is a little different. The glue needs to be on the face of the short wall, right? And on this edge. Now I have enough glue in my brush, I can tap, tap, tap. I don't have to worry about this being visible at any point in time. And it sits on that lip of the base and forms two additional nice 90-degree angles, and everybody's happy. Just double check to make sure you're looking good. Looks great. Very, very pleased. And now we can set this aside to cure while we work on our book cover. From the things out of pocket A, grab the largest piece of paper, and this has a linen texture. You might be working with a plain or a print. We're going to work with the paper the wrong side up, so this one is a little more smooth, I think, maybe than the other side, just so you're aware of that. And we need to get our ruler out. Hopefully you have found the usefulness of our grid ruler here. It does a really nice job with kind of shortcuts for measuring. And we need to put some guidelines on the wrong side of this paper with a pencil. So the first guide I want to draw will be 1 inch up from the bottom edge of this paper. And so on my ruler, this is a 3-inch wide ruler. So this bold line is 1 inch, that's 2 inches. And then of course the whole thing would be 3 inches. So this is my 1 inch line here, this bold line consisting of 8 cubes. So 8 cubes from the bottom edge here is 1 inch. And maybe previously, when you measured 1 inch from the bottom, you would have gone 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, and then turned your ruler around to connect the dots. Here, it's a little more accurate, actually, to do it this way. There we go, my 1 inch line. Now I need another line 1.5 inches from the right edge of this paper. Now be mindful, the paper is positioned horizontally in front of me. So 1.5 inches would be 8 plus 4 more cubes, and that puts me right smack dab on the center of my 3-inch grid ruler. And I'll draw this line. Now how about we just double check? Measure, yes, that's 1.5 inches. Okay, so if you have any doubt, definitely go back because that measurement is kind of crucial. Then you have your boards that remain. Just take one of the covers and place it vertically on your work surface. Let's add a line 1.5 inches. So again, that's smack dab down the center of my grid ruler is 1.5 inches off of one vertical edge of my board here. Okay. Now I'll place my ruler back down kind of near that line I drew. And we will apply glue to this marked area on my cover, turn it over, and drop it down onto that 1.5 inch guideline here, resting along the 1 inch guideline at the bottom. So the reason we draw the line here is because we're flying blind here. I got to put this face down on the paper and I want to make sure it's perfect. Okay, so that intersecting corner of the pencil lines is where the corner of the board will go. I hope that all made sense. I'm going to add some glue to this. I'm holding my bookboard off of my work surface, and then I'm going to pick up some of the glue that I put down with the chisel tip of my brush and go right along the edge of that pencil line. It's important to go to the edge of the line, not near it, but literally to it. You don't want to have excess glue here, no dripping happening. And notice that I'm working in broad strokes. I'll set the brush down always in the same place so I don't accidentally get glue on something. And again, I'm going to shoot for the corner here going into the intersecting pencil lines. And I want to try to make sure it's as level and straight as possible. So with my grid ruler, I can literally put it back on that guideline I drew and make sure that this board is resting on the edge of my grid ruler. Keeps it nice and straight. Okay, now let's just do a little check. If I flip this over, look, it's perfectly aligned. Now, have I made a few of these in the past? Probably 100. So maybe it didn't go as smoothly for you. I want you to just be gracious with yourself as you're working with this project. Maybe for the first time, it's your first one. So just have reasonable expectations for yourself, okay? A reminder, keep the spine now off of your work surface while applying glue. And then once glue has been applied, you're gonna set this on that 1 inch line and 1/4 of an inch from the cover, because that's what's gonna allow the spine to move, okay? Without that gap or gutter, you won't be able to open and close your box. So I'm gonna put some glue on here, holding it up, spreading the glue from the center to the edge in long strokes, rotate the board, and then go the other direction while you still hold it off of your work surface. If you don't feel comfortable doing it this way, make sure you always work with a clean sheet of paper to protect your work surface while you're gluing. And then I'll just place this here. Notice the ruler is my helper. It just makes sure that the spine isn't leaning crooked one way or the other. And I've got 1/4 of an inch. That's 2 cubes on the ruler separating the cover and the spine. Then I will take the remaining cover, add the glue, spread while holding it off of my desk here. And if you take real tiny little strokes and a lot of time with this, the glue will eventually dry and it will kind of have a glossy look to it. I want you to notice that my boards here are kind of a soft white. No dripping, no pooling, but it definitely has a nice thorough application of glue. And again, I'm using the ruler here to help me stay level and checking to make sure I have 2 cubes between my cover and my spine. Okay, a little wide there. Flip everything over and just give it a nice burnish. You can use a bone folder in this situation. I do find that sometimes a bone folder can scar the paper a little bit, so I like to take my instructions and put that as a layer between the paper I'm burnishing and my bone folder, and that just protects everything and keeps it looking fabulous. And then no, there's no air, you know, there's no warping of the paper with this particular glue. I love working with it. Now we have this little remaining exposed area here of the cover, and that's what this piece of paper, the print, probably, if you're substituting, it might not be, whatever you've selected, that's gonna fit right into that area. So this is how we attach it. We'll apply glue to the mat board, holding it up, and again, getting glue from the tip of the chisel tip of the foam brush, run that along that seam. I'm going right up to that wine-colored paper. Then working my way to the edge here. No surface of the board shall be free of glue. You want every little spot to be covered. Now this I call the drag and drop. So drag this cover along the paper and it's going to click into place as it drops onto the board with the perfect seam. And that just prevents glue from, you know, moving where you don't want it as well. Surefire way to nail the landing. But, you know, since it's a liquid glue, nailing the landing is not absolutely required. There's a lot of forgiveness there, but once it bonds and starts curing, it's not going anywhere, just so you know. You're committed. All right, there's our outside wrapped cover. It's already looking a lot like a beautiful book, isn't it? Love that. Now you need a pair of scissors, and I'm going to miter the corners. A quick tip for you. A lot of people accidentally cut right up to the tip of the corner of the board. Don't do that. You want to leave about 1/8 of an inch past the tip of the corner so that you don't have a naked corner when you wrap this. And just a little tip that the thickness of our grid rulers happens to be 1/8 of an inch. So if I were to lay this ruler at an angle, touching the tip of the corner and draw a pencil line on the outside of the ruler, that gives you a really surefire guide to not remove too much paper. If I cut on the outside of that line, boom. Once you become more experienced, you'll feel comfortable just trimming the corners. I kind of like to do like a V shape rather than a complete angle, but an angle works. That's why that ruler trick is kind of nice for beginners, if that's you. We are ready to wrap our cover. One of my favorite things. It's very rewarding, but we need to train these flaps that extend past the boards where they're going to live. This will give you the most success possible. What I like to do is take my non-dominant hand, in my case my left hand, and push down on the board, and then take my bone folder and just go under the flap and then move that flap up at a 90-degree angle so that the flap touches the edge of the board perfectly. Then take your hand and wrap the paper forward and use the bone folder to make the final crease. That's where that's going to end up living, okay? That was one section. I'm going to go to the next section and make that 90-degree upturn, grab it, and then flatten it down. Rotate, always the book so that you are working in a comfortable position, and never you can always rotate your project, but always try to be working in a position of strength and comfort. And the final side here. Next, what I like to do is glue down the long flaps first. I think in part because I think it's the most work. So only do the long flaps. Don't move on to the short flaps until I give you a little tip. Now there's a lot of glue that remains in my brush. So at this point, I'm not going to add glue at all. I'm just going to use what's there, because basically all I've been doing is absorbing a lot of glue into the foam, and I don't want to waste my glue. So I'm just, as you notice, working with the project off of my work surface. Never want to get, and again, if you are feeling more comfortable keeping it down while you apply glue, and since the glue needs to go to the edge, always work with a fresh sheet of scrap paper, maybe a magazine that you've read, if you still get magazines or catalogs or whatever. And do you see how easily and quickly those flaps obeyed? It's because I gave them instructions beforehand by doing that 90-degree turn up. And then I still have enough glue in my brush, I think, to do this second long flap. Notice I'm not working my way around clockwise. I'm doing long flap and then the other long flap. Glue must go to the edge, and anywhere you don't have glue, it's not going to stick. Magic doesn't hold it there. It's got to be the glue. The glue is kind of your magic, right? Okay, so you can see again, beautifully wrapped. We have the short flaps that remain, and we have to deal with that excess paper at the tip of those corners. So to do that, I just go to give it a little tuck in and a tuck in there. You see how that paper just kind of wraps like a tiny little gift, the side of a gift? And then let's test drive it. See what happens when we fold this paper down. You've got a beautiful library corner there. That makes me very happy. So I wonder if I have enough glue in my brush still while I hold this up. It's a nice size to work with, honestly, to be able to hold everything up. But it's not required as long as you remember to protect your work surface. So I'll make that little turn. And we have to do the other side. So again, do the tuck. And if you look at the books that you have on your shelf that are made professionally, that's how they look, right? Now you're a pro. If you have to apply glue, avoid putting glue into the corners. You don't want it pooling there. I just put a little dab in the seam in the center and then work it to the edges. Again, I'm like a broken record. Keep it off your work surface if you can. I know our hands sometimes don't always cooperate with what we want them to do. And if you think I'm making it look really easy, it's because I have had a lot of practice. You always just want to remember that, practice makes perfect. Okay, so here we have something that looks just like a book cover. So you've not only learned how to make this project, but you've learned how to make a perfect book cover with a partially wrapped spine here looking fabulous and the decorative paper on the front. You could replicate that and change sizes to whatever your needs are. It's pretty cool. Next, I want to cover the spine with this matching piece of paper from Pocket A. So check that out. Now, this is going to line up. Here's my print. It's going to line up with the edge of the wine paper from the other side. Be careful about attaching it horizontally and extending like this. You want it to be about 1/8 of an inch from the top and bottom edges, so it's like a vertically placed piece. I'm going to show you my trick for applying glue to a piece of paper. I like to hold it in my hand, kind of cupping it into a U shape, and then I'll apply my glue. And I'm going to work from the center to the edge. Once again, if you don't feel comfortable with this, no problem. Just place the paper on another piece of scrap paper, fresh, and then apply the glue that way. But since we have to go to the edge, again, if you don't make it to the edges of the paper, it's not going to stick. It's really important. Now the paper's going to soften as the moisture from the glue starts to get into it, which in a way is good because you want that paper to be flexible at this point. We're covering the spine, and I'm looking here on the left so I can line that up beautifully with the seam. Then centered from top to bottom. I'm going to work my way from left to right here. So if I just sort of put that down, now here is the gutter. I'm just going to run the pad of my finger, maybe the nail, into the gutter a little bit, then across the spine into the next gutter, and wow, wasn't that just fun to watch? Really a cool project here so far. Okay. All right, everybody, I got a big mea culpa here. This is a blooper reel at this point. I'm kind of laughing because you can see I've kind of messed things up a little bit, and I'm jumping ahead and jumping back. So I fixed my error, but I forgot to push record while I was fixing it. So now I'm going back. I'm going to do this one more time, but this time I have record going. This is the step I forgot. Before I attach this inside cover, you need to attach the ribbon to the cover. So let me show you how I did that. Took my ruler, I found the 0 center of my cover. So in that case, you'll get a reading of 3.5 and 3.5 on this side. And that's what gives you your 0 center, okay, where I drew a line. In your kit, you have some ribbon, and I cut the 1 yard length in half. And then you can take your glue and just add some glue to the line that you drew, that you can kind of know where your center is. Or you could eyeball it, no big deal. You would have done the same thing on this side, and then you will attach the piece of paper here by applying the glue while you hold it off your surface, and then center it here. Make sure that this paper goes on the same side as your printed paper and not on this side. I've also made that mistake too. So just a heads up, when you apply this paper, make sure it's thoroughly glued and it goes on the same side as the printed cover, and that your ribbon is sandwiched in between the inside wrap and then the outside cover. I hope that makes sense. Now, this other area doesn't get covered with any decorative paper because it will end up being covered with the box. But before we can install the box, we need to wrap it. This is fun and kind of interesting, so just bear with me here. I'm going to pull everything else out of pocket B. This piece goes inside the base of the box, so we'll set that aside for now. And then we have these two lovely, lovely pieces. They do have, mine have script on them, so I'm just going to make sure the script is right side up when I turn them over. I'm going to get my trusty ruler again, and I'm going to mark a line 1/4 of an inch from the bottom edge. So the first solid line on my ruler is 1/4 of an inch. So every cube is 1/8, every solid is 1/4. And then all I have to do is just draw across. Then I'm going to take from on one of the sheets, I will turn my ruler so that I'm 2 inches from the edge. So that's this big solid line, and the next solid line, that's 2 inches. And draw a line that way, and I can look it up. Sure enough, that says 2 inches. Take the next piece, and again, I will make a line 1/4 of an inch from the edge. And then set that aside and grab our box, which is now cured. It's not fully stable until we get it wrapped. I think that really gives it a lot of strength. So here we go. I'm going to take the piece, place it horizontally, the piece that we added the line to, the 2-inch vertical line. And we're going to place the long wall of this box right here so that the corner meets the intersecting pencil lines, kind of like what we did with the cover earlier. So how do we get that there? Well, I'm going to hold the box, apply some glue thoroughly to the whole thing. You don't want to miss a single surface here. Again, holding it up. You're all warmed up now with glue application. You're kind of getting the feel of it. If you're new to this product, you're getting a much better idea of how much to apply in order so that it doesn't drip. Now it's really important here, make sure that the open end of the box is not facing this way. Make sure the base is facing you. The base is adjacent to that line. How do I know to remind you of this? Yep, it happens. It does happen. Okay, so I'm just gonna flip this over for a second. And you see what I mean about the direction? I wanted that flap to be kind of at the bottom, because there's this text on this beautiful print here. Let's give that a second to bond. And now I'm gonna just fold this over here. This is eventually gonna wrap its way around. I'm gonna make a nice crease and apply enough glue on this short wall to wrap this piece around. We'll fine tune this later, but I just want to get that one patched in. Okay, then we gotta do the other side. This isn't too hard, is it? Okay, so right about there. And make sure we get a nice coat here. I had quite a bit of glue in my brush. Wrap it. And you know, if you want to just double check, see I'm on that pencil line all the way around. That's what I'm after. If you want, you can square the corner a little bit. Now the next piece will help us continue on. It can overlap, or you can just go seam to seam, whatever you feel most comfortable with. I'm going to start maybe with this side here. I'm going to try doing seam to seam. I think initially I overlapped it, but we'll see what works best. So let's add our glue right up to the seam here. And I'm going to place this just end to end. Make sure it's really tightly matched there. So then it'll go around and then this will come up. Okay, so the next phase of the box wrapping, it's probably the most tedious job in the whole project, is wrapping this box, but I'm telling you, when it's done, you'll have that skill and you'll have a fabulous looking box, I promise. Okay, let's get this glue applied. All right, now I can bring the box to the paper on this rotation, and I can aim it so we don't like go off in any direction. We're keeping nice and level. I don't know if you can see that. Nice and level with our line. And then bond. And finally, we have this last flap. So since I know where the flap ends, I'm going to apply the glue to the paper instead of the box, or you could do a combination. You can even add it so that it bonds at the top edge too. That's always good. So we do have that seam. And we have a funny looking wrapped box. Good job. Our next step will be to miter some corners by cutting a little V out of each corner. It looks like I could use some burnishing here. You see how that paper isn't bonding quite yet? I'm just gonna make sure that makes a good connection with the glue before it dries. Not a bad idea to give that a burnish. Continuing on with my triangular mitering here, just take out the triangle from each corner so that we make a series of 4 1/4-inch flaps. And then it wouldn't be a bad idea to just give those flaps a little crease so they bond a little more easily. Okay, the flaps can come back, and I probably still have enough glue in my brush. Are you sensing a theme there? And then I've got to kind of hold it there until it bonds. You are folding against the grain here, which is why the paper is going to act a little more stubborn to your wishes. If at any time you get a bunch of glue all over your hands or your work surface, it's just freshen up your space. Maybe have a paper towel or baby wipe on hand. I work with this product so much that I rarely do need to do that, but sometimes I forget. If you're brand new to this kind of crafting, it's a little bit harder to kind of keep track of it all. So don't be afraid to grab a paper towel or a damp cloth, something that you can use to make sure your hands and your work surface stay clean. I hope you're learning some tips along the way. If you've learned something for the first time, feel free to share it with me. I love to hear about how these projects are ringing with you. I hope you're enjoying this one. That's lovely. Okay, maybe just a little more burnish here. So that gives me a nice, neat looking edge on my box, right? Very professional. Okay, now the next step is to get rid of these big flaps. We are going to use them to wrap the inside of the box. One thing I like to do is kind of square off my edges. So I'm going to take my ruler and rest it along the top lip of the box at the corner, and then I can just like square off my corner a little bit better. I'm not sure if you can see this at all, but I had a nice crease added. Instead of having these rounded edges, I now have square edges, and the ruler just kind of helps me do that. Gives me a definitive crease. Do you see that? Nice square edge here. Then with scissors, I'm going to cut right along that crease. Okay, on all 4 of these corners. Right to the top edge of the box. Now I successfully created 4 flaps. And this is where my scrap paper comes in, because at this point I'm just done holding it. I need to have a way to allow my project to touch my work surface without having to worry about it. Okay, we have a set of short walls and long wall flaps, and they get treated differently. So I'm going to get these short flaps out of the way for a little bit here. I'm going to bend them back a little. And the long flaps, I'm going to be very demanding, okay? So do you see how when I try to fold this flap down into the box, it touches this corner here, touches this top lip of the wall? Well, tough beans. I'm going to force this flap down into the box. Just force it, okay? And the paper will tear at the corner. That's totally fine. I forced the paper down in there so it kind of goes around this corner and down into the bottom of the box like that. Turn it around. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm just going to demand that the paper goes down in there. Now the paper is still dry and it tore at the corner again, but do you see how the corner is beautifully and perfectly covered? That's what we want. Then I'm going to take the paper back out of one side, grab my scrap paper here, place the box flap on the scrap paper, and I will add some glue. I know it's really heavily shadowed here, but I'm applying glue to the entire flap. And as I do that, the paper is going to start to soften from the liquid in the glue, which is what we want. A nice shiny coat there. Careful about where your scrap paper is sitting. And then I'm going to shove this back down where I told it was going to go earlier. And then you kind of want to come in with your bone folder and make sure that that paper bonds with the sides and the base of your box as flat as possible. And that's why having the moisture of the paper in that case is pretty nice. Now I'm going to take out the other side that we prepared, find a new spot on my scrap paper here, apply the glue to the flap. This is probably the most challenging part of this project, so I hope that you can see, if you just follow the steps, how easy it truly can be. It doesn't have to be something to stress about. You just work with the paper, and you are the one in charge, not the paper. Plus, we've worked in the grain direction that allows us to be as successful as possible. Now, before we add our short flaps, I'm not going to do the force move with the short flap and force that all in there. I'm going to actually remove some of this paper so that it doesn't so I don't have to force anything. It's just gonna wrap nicely around. So the way I do that, again, is with my ruler. One option would be to take your ruler and put it right up so that it meets the edge of that inside edge of the box, and then just draw a line of where that is. And then you can do the same on the other side here. So that's one option. And then what you would do is come in with scissors and cut along your pencil line. And when you reach the top lip of the box, you can just take that out, that little strip. And you are working with a cover weight paper here. That's kind of what makes this a little more challenging. If you were working with text weight paper, it would be much easier. But our kits are made with 80-pound cover weight paper. And I also found that I like the way, the strength that the heavier weight paper affords the box. Once I've trimmed away those little scraps, you see how it wraps it so cleanly, so beautifully. Now on the other side, I'm going to show you the other way you can do this. I think it's a little quicker, but you have to be comfortable with the use of a craft knife. So I'm going to place my ruler there and just immediately cut, and then just clip away the paper at the corner to get rid of it, and then that's gone. So it's like, it turns into a one-step project. Then we bring the ruler over, make the cut here and there, and then that's gone. Now this is ready to be trained to bring it down into the box. Remove it again. Get a clean area of your scrap paper. Apply your glue. I think I would advise having a little overlap on both sides so there's no possibility of a seam here. Gotta be careful. And then take out the other side. Fresh area of scrap paper. I'm getting down to it. I just used one sheet. Okay, remove that. Bring it down in. Beautiful. This base is still exposed. That's why we trimmed this paper to fit. So I'll use the cup technique again, where I just cup it into my hand. So much glue now in my brush, I'm pretty sure, but I added a little. Holding it off of my work surface. Down in she goes, center it up as best you can while the glue is wet. And burnish that down in there, maybe with your bone folder. So nice. Okay, next, I need my cover. Where did I put my cover? Okay, so now I'm bringing my cover back in here, and you've got your box, and that's going to be placed right on this side. Now, because of the snafu I had earlier, I already have glue on my base. So you just apply the glue to the base, make sure it's, you know, spread out evenly and all the way to the edges, nice and fresh there. And then center that down on your cover. You'll want to watch for margin at the top, bottom, and right lip, and also that you don't go into the spine area. But if you go into the spine, your book won't open and close, or your box won't, rather. Box won't open and close. Now, what I highly recommend you do at this point is take the box somewhere where you can put it underneath a heavy object. That's going to allow that uneven surface at the base to bond well with the cover board itself, and then we'll move on to making our cards together. Here we have our pocket C. This is an awesome pocket here. It's got so much work already done toward our dozen cards. And I'm going to be honest with you, the fun part is what I've left for you to do in your own creative style. But I've got some tips along the way. So here I'm taking my card that I've scored, and I'm looking for the bump of the score line. That's what goes on the inside of the fold. And that's why I had you score with the linen side facing up. Now notice that I'm going to take these kind of in batches here and just press with my fingers, and I always like to just double check that the edges are aligned before I make the crease. I never implicitly trust my score lines. So now I just burnish all 4 cards at once, and it gives me a nice crisp fold. Now these green card bases are 100-pound cover weight. They're substantially heavier. So in that case, you might want to burnish them with your bone folder 1 card at a time. So I don't know if a lot of you are card makers out there or if you're scrapbookers. I do have an alternative version of this project that instead of making cards, it uses the materials plus a sheet of mat board to make a mini album that fits inside the box. So I have a workshop video and instruction sheet that you can purchase online to help you make that project in lieu of the cards. Now at this point, you've got all of your card bases and you can distribute them. Let's do a row of white, a row of green, and a row of pink. Then you have these 4 by 5¼ inch panels that you can distribute however you like. Like maybe you want to mix it up a little bit. Maybe you want to have some varied color combinations. To me, this is sort of the fun part. I'm gonna have a lot of great options. This green has to go here, burgundy here, and I'm just playing around, playing with color, right? Then you have all these beautiful prints. So maybe I'll put some of the green prints with those green panels. It's so pretty. How about, oh, on pink, that is really lovely. Here I'll put this more plain one with maybe this, so I have a little more color there. I mean, there's no requirement. This one might end up being horizontal, right? I'm just showing you that there's 1,000 ways you could mix and match all these cards and panels, but the best part is because we cut this to that special size of 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. Look at that beautiful reveal. You have an 1/8 inch reveal here, a 16th inch here, and such a lovely foundation on which we can build our cards. Now, how do we get from here to a finished card? Well, that's where pocket D comes in. D for decorations, okay? You've got all of those cut aparts and all of the paper scraps that you can use to mat, to just add anything you like. And when we design our page kit cut aparts, many of the times we try to design the artwork so that the text doesn't go much larger than a card base. So yes, you'd have to adapt this to fit onto the card. You could then trim it out and mat it with one of the mini sheets of paper here. And I want to let you know that when I finished my cards, I had almost no scraps left. I used nearly everything that came in the kit. Now let me show you some of these finished cards to give you an idea of how it all works out. I also use the embellishments that came in the kit. That includes these die cut frames. We've got these gorgeous embroidered flowers. We had a set of these pearl buckles as well as the wood word. Now this big joy, I was trying to put it on a card and I realized that would look really cool on the outside of the box. So that's what I did with the joy, and I used our bookbinding glue to attach it to the box. I think I actually put a little white ink on there as well to kind of soften it up a little bit. So here's your card tour, and I'm leaving this to you. I'm leaving the creativity of this part to you. I gave you all the mechanics to set you up so that you can have some fun doing creative things on your own, but I just want to give you a couple of ideas. The sentiments in the cut aparts are designed to fit within the window. Just wanted to mention that. Those cut aparts and the tags are a perfect match. I utilized the ribbon. There's that pearl buckle. This was a long strip, but the text fit right within the card. Now in this case, the text was on a strip, kind of like this. And so I just cut it out into like a graffiti style and added the words to a panel that I got from the scrap. Same thing here. Happiness is to hold flowers in both hands. That was this one. So I just matted it with pink and burgundy from the scrap pile and added the embroidered flower. This was just as is, and I matted it again and added a ribbon twist here. There's another die cut tag with the embroidered flower. A repeat of that. A longer border strip with the pearl buckle on the ribbon. Here's a circular die cut. I just die cut it from the circle art here. That was this. And the beautiful sentiment. And then I just had some flowers that could be cut from the cut aparts, and I just fussy cut them and placed them on with some foam adhesive. Oh, and I even just used some scrap of the white linen as a liner for the inside of the card. Since we do have the luxury of an hour-plus workshop, I am going to take a few moments to show you my mindset or my process behind how I finish my cards while adapting those page kit cut-aparts. Now, assuming you've cut them all into individual pieces, I'm going to show you how I transformed this element and this card panel and card base into kind of a fun card using a fun ribbon trick. The first thing I need to do is adapt the panel so it's a lot smaller and can fit onto the card base. And you'll notice I'm using an 8x8 grid ruler here. And what I typically do is just place it over my item. And I'm studying where the text starts and giving myself an approximate measurement that I'm looking for. I think I'm going to go with just 3 inches on this piece because that will give me all of the text and a good portion of the flower. So I'll grab my trimmer. And I'm going to start on this side and take off this pretty little border that we have on there from the bottom edges and the left edge of this. Okay, so now I have Collect Beautiful Moments here. Now I just need to trim it into a 3-inch square. And my grid ruler earlier showed me that the image would still be beautiful if I trimmed it to 3 inches. Okay, then looking back at my card base, that'll fit on there really nicely. It needs a little contrast, right? So I'm going to create a border around this, a mat for my piece. And since this is 3x3, I'm going to cut my mat to 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. So here's the scrap from the D pocket, and I'll trim to 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. And of course, that's gonna, I can guarantee it'll fit perfectly. Now it still needs a little something, and the color that's missing from the situation is this wine color. Let's see, is this piece gonna fit? No, but I do have a larger piece of wine. Oh, that's perfect. Now, I like to have mats of varying sizes, and I already talked about that a little bit when we did this. Remember, we trimmed this to 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, and that gives me that tinier reveal, and then it's matched up with the 1/8 inch reveal here. It just is very pleasing. I'm gonna do the same thing to this. Give me a tiny sliver of wine paper peeking out past the green. So remember, this was 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. So enter the trimmer. And here's 3 1/4 on my trimmer. I'm going to scoot to the left 1/8 of an inch and make it 3 3/8 by 3 3/8. Not a whole lot of math involved, just a little tiny bit, but it's so worth it. I hope you agree. That way you're not guessing, right? All of your borders are going to be perfectly aligned and symmetrical, and that's going to be gorgeous. Let me grab some adhesive. And I feel safe to just do the official nesting, so I will add adhesive to both layers of this. And look at that reveal. And it's perfect on all 4 sides. Then this is going to be a little bit of a wider reveal here on all 4 sides, symmetrical of course. Then I'm going to go ahead and add, let's see, I got text on here, make sure it's positioned in a pleasing way. And what I'm doing now is centering this with equal margin on the left, top, and right. And I'm even going to go ahead and nest this onto my final panel, but not the card base quite yet. To finish this off and balance the weight of this image up here with this emptiness in the bottom, I'm going to use some of the gorgeous 2 yards of ribbon included in this kit. And I'm going to show you my little linked chain link ribbon trick. So for that, I will measure the ribbon width and trim it to just wider than the card base. And I'll do that with a second piece of the same size. And just trim that off. For this step, I like to use tape, and I usually keep tape in a dispenser handy because it's kind of like a third hand. I don't need to pick it up. I can just pull it off and tear off a piece. So take one of the ribbons you trimmed and fold it in half. And I kind of want the center part of the ribbon to be at the center of the card. It could be offset as well, but that's kind of where I want it. In this case, I want it to land. And then I'm going to wrap those ends around to the back, grab a piece of tape, and just place it down. Make sure it's down. And now when I pick it up, I have this funny little ribbon situation here. Now here's the second piece of ribbon. And by the way, if you didn't know this, ribbon has grain. So do you see how the ribbon naturally makes a loop around? But if I hold it this way, do you see how it bobs up? So the ribbon wants to go. It's the same way it went off the spool, right? Just like we worked on with the paper, ribbon has the way it wants to go, and I try not to fight it if I don't have to. So now I'm going to grab this ribbon and thread it through the initial loop that I made. Then support that ribbon from the left and give it a tug to pull to the right. Now I gotta tell you why I love this bow so much. I love it because it doesn't have a lumpy knot. So I love to mail cards to my friends, but the last thing I want is for something to arrive postage due, and I apologize in advance if that has happened to you from a card I've sent. But do you see this? There's really no big knot here. Nothing that's going to get caught in those postal machines. And that chain link is beautiful. And you can mix ribbons with this as well. Like you could do the pink on one loop and the green on the other. That really adds a lot. We could try that. But just tonight, just to give you an idea about how I go about finishing my cards. Isn't that lovely? Let's look at another example. For my next trick, I'm going to show you how I used one of these cut-out parts that was designed to fit inside the window of the die cuts we included in the Magnolia kit. I'm going to go ahead and just remove that inner tag punch right at the top here. And then let's just test this. Be patient with yourself. Oh, nothing in nature blooms all year. Ain't that the truth? Okay, so I've got a position. I'm going to flip it over. Now that I have it centered. And my handy tape dispenser from the office supply store stands ready to help. And so now I've got that nested inside. It could definitely use a little contrast. And since I have the green and the wine pictured here, I'm going to nest this with some of the pink. So once again, let's grab our grid ruler. Why do I like this 8x8? Well, I can just place the whole thing over the ruler here and get my height and length read at the same exact time. So it looks like this tag is 2x4. So from a mathematical perspective, I'm just going to add 1/4 of an inch to each of those measurements. So I'm going to start out with the 4. I'm going to make it 4 1/4. And then for the 2, I'll make it 2 1/4. Now observe also that these corners are rounded. I want to match that. So I'm going to grab my corner chomper, and it looks like the 1/4 inch radius is going to be perfect. So I will chomp those corners. Lovely. Now I also want to add some ribbon to this. I've got this fun ribbon trick, another one I want to show you. So let's just get our print nested onto the panel. We're not going to quite yet attach to the card base. And I'm going to attach this to the card as well, just the matte portion. And where should I put this? It's all so pretty. Oh gosh, maybe I'll just center it. I love that beautiful background. Okay, so now I want to show you my little 2-part trick here. Let's take this green ribbon again. And of course, I'm still checking the grain. It wants to go this way. So I'm going to loop it through the top of my tag. And I want enough ribbon on here for it to go around to the back. Okay. Then I'm just going to turn it over and go ahead and nest this onto the pink. Take the ribbon now, and I can string it up here. I'm going to spread it nicely so you can really see it. Bring it around to the back of the panel. That's why I didn't put it onto the card quite yet. There we go. Now it's not quite finished. I'm going to show you a simple way to add a top. There are 2 ways you could do it actually. I'm going to show both of them to you. So the most minimal knot size is going to be if you just make a simple single knot, cut at an angle here, and just glue line it. So you've actually created this deception. It looks like this is all one piece, but it's the 2 ribbon topper trick. Another way to do it is to make a basic bow. So if I just take my ribbon, I got 2 full yards of this to play with. I've made 2 loops, 2 bunny ears, cross them. When you cross the right over the left, that leaves this loop here at the bottom. So I'm going to run the top ribbon around the back through the loop and then give it a pull, and you'll have a really ugly bow. That's okay. At this point, all you do is adjust to the size you want. You just kind of keep tugging until you're pleased with the size of the ribbon loops, as big or as small as you want. When you pull it tight, it does create a knot, but not a very bulky one. It's pretty flat, which I like. It seems a little flatter than your standard knot.
Not all adhesives are created equal, but I do love a good glue line for placing. So I burnish the glue line onto the tag and top it with this. And now it really does look like I have one piece of ribbon here creating all that magic, but it's really two. So it's a fake, ribbon fake. Maybe I could add this one down at the bottom here. That would be kind of sweet as well, wouldn't it? So of course, the final last step is to grab our adhesive. I'm using my ATG, which I love for efficiency, economy, the whole works. And here I have my finished card. And the last trick I want to show you is how I work with the border strips. Now there's a piece of information that we kind of just know or maybe have memorized by now, but the width of this panel here is 5 1/8. Whether you like it or not, that's what the width of the panel is. What I'm going to do here with this sentiment that's on a 12-inch strip, since it was designed for a page kit, is I'm going to take off the little end here of that sentiment, turn it around, and find 5 1/8. There. Now I'm guaranteed that this sentiment is going to fit on my card base, but I want to mat it with something. So let's find out what the width of the sentiment is. It's 1 inch. Okay, so here I have my strip. I'm going to create a 5/8 inch piece, and I want it to be a little larger than 1 inch since the width of this is 1 inch. And I want to create a 1 1/4 inch strip to mat this. I like to work backwards. So if I start here at 3, when this is here, and that's 1 inch, that's going to be 1 1/4 inch piece. It's a little easier to cut at this measurement than it would be to cut at just 1 1/4. I'm not sure if you followed that, but that's kind of how I do the math on all of my skinny cuts like that. Okay, well that's easy. Now I'm going to just grab my favorite little ATG and nest it onto my wine colored mat. This was, again, the color not, I could have used green as well. That would have been beautiful, but I have a better plan for that. I'm going to place this across the bottom edge of my card. And then I have, again, my yards and yards of green satin. I'll trim some of that. And the kit comes with these adorable pearl buckles. So find the grain here. I'm going to go under the buckle, like through that loop, and then over that little line in the middle there, thread it. I can have it land anywhere I want. That's pretty. I'll grab 2 pieces of just regular cellophane tape, kind of figure out where I want this to be, flip around to the back, grab my adhesive. Now with this pearl buckle, you may not want to throw that in the mail. This might want to be you might want to make this a hand deliverable. Nothing wrong with that. And nest onto my card base. And there's another beautiful example of how to adapt the cards using your measuring, ribbon, and adhesive skills. I hope you found these tips helpful and maybe even a little inspiring. Now all you have to do is pick up a set of 12 A2 envelopes, take your incredible stack of a dozen cards, drop them in the box, and you've got a beautiful keepsake gift. Now let's just say these pastel florals don't really trip your trigger, not a problem. Again, any Club Scrap kit can be substituted. Let me show you a completely different variation and color scheme using our mariachi collection. This kit came with the beautiful blue taffeta ribbon, this totally cool silver concho, some gorgeous red silver edged ribbon, stunning artwork on the prints. Again, that was the mariachi kit, so it's a completely different feel, isn't it? We've got these super cool dimensional rosettes here that I glued onto the inside cover, making sure I didn't interfere with the edge of the box. And then inside you'll find, once again, a dozen really stunning cards adapting the cut aparts in the page kit. Now I will mention our card kits match as well. So I could have easily just grabbed a set of card kit cut aparts as well, and those would have been more specific to birthdays, anniversaries, or whatever. But these general page kit cut aparts adapt incredibly well to cards as well. So I just wanted to point that out, that once you sort of free the bird of creativity, make that Magnolia box along with me, and then go on your own, select your favorite theme and color schematic, and make another one. That way you're really going to solidify your new skills. Now, if you do complete your project, be sure to share it with us on our Facebook chat group. It's an encouragement to others who have access to the same supplies you do, and we love to cheer you on. Now, there's one last thing I need you to do.
Join us as a member of Club Scrap. We'd love to have you as a member of either our page club or our card club. We love to do all things paper. Every kit always comes with instructions and a video workshop to help you utilize everything that comes in that box. So thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in another workshop soon.